Alright guys, so this is the Intro to Engineering Design JanTerm. I'm Creed Beavers.
I'm Adam Liang.
And I'm Sam Crane.
Okay, so our main question in our JanTerm is how can we sort and recycle wooden and plastic and metal objects? Oh, look, it's me. Okay. So our big project in our JanTerm is we had to sort and recycle steel, wooden, and plastic marbles. And so what my group did was that we took the properties of each marble. So the steel marble, we knew that it was magnetic. So we thought that maybe we could, direct the magnetic marbles with a magnet into a well. And so that's what we did for the steel marbles. And for the wooden marbles, we knew that they wouldn't bounce. So we thought that we could just let them drop into a separate container, and that's how we separated the wooden ones. And for the plastic ones, we knew that they had a really high bounce. So we thought that they could just bounce into a separate bin. So that's basically how we separated it.
In our class, we went on 2 field trips. The first being we went to the Athens-Clarke County Recycling Center, and we learned how their process works. The coolest part was there was an eddy current over the conveyor belt that separated the aluminum cans from the rest of the trash. And our second field trip was we went to the top secret Coke Freestyle facility and learned how the Coke Freestyle machine worked.
Okay, so Adam talked about the solutions we found, and Creed talked more about the problems we found, and I kind of want to talk about the intersection of the two. So engineering isn't really supposed to be just this black box thing where a bunch of guys are working on, some weird machine in a machine shop. There's a lot of other facets to it that kind of come into it, and it was really cool seeing the real-life applications of it. At the recycling center, for example, there's still the issue of they don't know how to sort out glass, that they can't separate green, brown, and clear glass. And so that's a problem that if someone found a solution, they could really help with, they could probably do pretty well for themselves and help a big issue. The other aspect to it was in every place that we went, we found different facets that kind of tied into it. For example, Recycling Center currently doesn't get federal benefits because we don't declare how much that we've recycled. I feel like that's kind of an issue, and if we can take advantage of that, figure out a solution there, and if someone understood the engineering and the government aspect, then they could figure out that problem. The other thing is Coke talked about IP and how basically that you have to patent all of the things that you create. You can't, if you want to play the business game, you have to be able to do all that and have a full team. So we need people who understand not only the engineering, but the law as well. So engineering. So, basically engineering is not supposed to be this thing on its own. It's something that ties into everything else. And seeing the big picture was really the coolest part of the class.
Okay, next up we have the Bible, the Civil Rights Movement in the U.S.
author. She's experienced in pastoral care and elder ministry. She's a native of Albany, Georgia, a graduate of Spelman College. She has a Master's of Divinity from the Interdenominational Theological Center of Atlanta University, with Anglican Studies at County School of Theology at Emory University. She talked to us a lot about her life growing up. She's the daughter of a prominent pastor in the historical church in Albany. Like I said, she shared her personal experience with the civil rights movement, specifically in Albany, because when a lot of people think of civil rights, they automatically assume cities in Alabama such as Birmingham, Selma, and Montgomery, and they don't realize that there are a lot of other cities around the country, including Albany, that played a crucial role during the movement. Reverend Williams recalled a progression of her mindset during that time, and she gave us a new perspective in the way that she told us as a teenager how she got involved with the movement, and she put us in her shoes, which made us wonder why and if we would join the movement as a teenager during that time.
Reverend Dr. Katie G. Cannon was the first African-American woman ordained in the United Presbyterian Church. She focuses her work in the areas of Christian ethics, womanist theology, and women and religion and society. And she's also written multiple books, including Feminism and the Soul of the Black Community and Black Womanist Ethics. She grew up in Kannapolis, North Carolina. She talked to us about Jim and Jane Crowism and how during the Civil Rights era, not only Black Americans were under the civil rights. Jane Crowism today is called sexism, and basically she talked about how everyone needed civil rights. Feminism and womanism, there's a difference. In the civil rights era, feminism was just middle-class white women fighting for their civil rights. But womanism includes also women of color. Bishop Robert T. Wright was the first African-American to become an Episcopal bishop from Georgia. He served 5 years as a U.S. Navy helicopter crew chief and search and rescue diver. He went to Howard University in '91, Cambridge University, and Virginia Theological Seminary, and he was ordained in 1999. I think one of his best quotes was, "The status quo will elegantly defend itself," and he talked to us about how people will always defend the norm, and they will defend it so well that other people will go along with it, which will continue the continuation of the status quo.
Okay, so last week we went to see the movie Selma. It won a Golden Globe, and it's also up for a couple Oscars. It's a really good movie, and it talks about the march for voting rights from Selma to Montgomery. So we went to see that movie, which set up our trip to Alabama. We went to Alabama for 3 days. We went to Birmingham, and then we went to Selma, and then Montgomery, and then we visited Tuskegee.
Okay, so this is Kelly Ingram Park, and this was the site of the Children's March in May of 1963. And the Children's March was organized by Reverend James Bevel, and the purpose was to protest segregation. And so the plan was to fill up the jails. So the leaders of the movement asked at mass meetings who would be willing to fill up the jails, and the students volunteered. So that's why it's the Children's March. And so on the first day, 400 students were arrested. But then the next day, police responded with brutality, as you see here. They responded with clubs and water hoses and dogs. And so 700 were arrested that day. And the third day, 1,000 children were arrested. And the youngest child to be arrested was 4.
The 16th Street Baptist Church is across the street from Kelly Ingram Park, and it's the place where a lot of the meetings were held for the protest, the Children's March protest at Kelly Ingram Park. It's also the site of the famous bombing of the 4 little girls on September 15th, 1963. Those little girls were Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robertson. There was also a 5th little girl that a lot of people don't know about, Sarah Collins, who was the sister of Addie Mae Collins. She survived, and she's blind in one eye. There were also 2 other kids who were killed on that day. 13-year-old Virgil Ware was killed for no reason while he was riding on the handlebars of his brother's bike. And also Johnny Robertson, who was 16. He was throwing stones at cars that had Confederate flags, and a police officer shot him in the back.
Okay, so then we went to the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. And we crossed it, and this was the site of Bloody Sunday. And that was in 1965. Hosea Williams and John Lewis led over 600 marchers on a march for voting rights. And the march was supposed to go from Selma to Montgomery, and that's 54 miles walking. But they were met at the bottom of this bridge by policemen, and they had clubs and tear gas, and they attacked them. And so they tried to do a second march, and Martin Luther King Jr. was at this one, and he asked clergy people from all over the country to march. But then they turned back for the second march, and that night a white clergyman from Boston was killed. So they decided they needed federal protection, and so they successfully completed the third march with over 3,200 marchers.
In Montgomery, we went to the Civil Rights Memorial Center by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it honors 40 martyrs of the Civil Rights Movement. And also, we talked about a lot of hate groups that are still around in America today. There are about 939 hate groups that we know about, and there are actually a lot of them that are headquartered in Atlanta. And so some of the martyrs that were honored were the 4 little girls, Martin Luther King Jr., and Emmett Till.
So then we went to the Rosa Parks Library and Museum, and most people know about how she refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery to a white passenger. And so she put herself in very real danger. But so her arrest incited the Montgomery bus boycott, and the boycott achieved success when the Supreme Court ruled to desegregate public transportation a year later. And we had a great time, and we learned a lot on our field trip. And thank you.
Okay, now we have Wilderness, American Culture, and Photography.
Okay, so we are Wilderness Photography. This is everybody that went on the trip. It's us.
Okay. So one of our first assignments was to find wilderness on campus. So the places that we went were the trail and the summer camp. This is actually one of the pictures we took. We were put in groups of 2. My partner, Kathleen LeBreton, took this picture. We found the snake in. It's pretty cool.
This was the first hike that we did. It was just Palisades at the Chattahoochee. I think this photo was taken by yours truly, Walker Jones, up front. That's me crouching on the rock. This is some mushrooms. This was taken by Grace Woodruff. Some water.
Alright, so this is a picture done in the style of Ansel Adams, and he was a wildlife photographer. He took pictures mostly in black and white, so that was at the Chattahoochee as well. Okay, this is a picture taken in the style of Robert Misrak. He's a wildlife photographer as well, and he really explores like how humans impact on nature. And so here we see like a plastic bag at the Chattahoochee that's kind of just polluting the environment. Again, there's a football on the bottom right over there, and bottom left for y'all. And this is all said like in the style of Robert Misrat.
So on our trip back to the hike-in, we hiked up there and we spent a full day and then came back. We came back to this state park where we saw Amarillo Falls, and we had the assignment of taking one waterfall picture each. And the challenge about it was that we had to use a long shutter speed because the goal was to make the water look smooth and flowing. So that's why it's seemed a little blurry in the water, but we also had to get everything else in focus. The rocks had to be super sharp and clear. Just another photo we have. So. Photo I was talking about. I think this one was taken by Hal Silcox, if I'm right. Then we also had some in black and white, again with the use of the long shutter speed.
Hey guys, so we went on our overnight trip, and we went to the hike-in, and in order to get there, there was a 5-mile hike, and we had our backpacks, which averaged about 25 to 30 pounds, and it was very foggy. And it pretty much remained foggy the entire trip. We had a great time. Yeah, okay, so here's some more pictures. These were actually taken from a GoPro, which was set to take pictures every 30 seconds. And so we just have a few examples of those in here. As you can see, again, very foggy. This one's actually a little spooky, but it's still foggy. Yeah. So basically, it was a lot of this. It's kind of eerie weather. Yeah. See, that one's actually a pretty good focus, but again, still very foggy. These are actually on the morning hike. There was a chance to wake up early to the sunrise, my bad. And they actually cleared up for this, so it was pretty nice. I think you actually took this picture, didn't you? What was that?
This is it's some trees in front of it. Sunrise. This was taken by Hustle.
Okay, so this picture is part of a series of pictures that we had to do for a project called, it wasn't called anything, but it was basically we had to take long exposure shots at night using lights because you can only basically see, when you're taking a picture with long exposure, you can only see where the light is at night. So it was taken using like flashlights and like headlamps and stuff like that. So we have like quite a few of these. Here's one of them taken using like blue light and a red light and a white one. This is another one, only white one. And this was actually made by my group. And it was Charlie, Gigi Pavur, and I, and Taylor Willis, and that's the Appalachian Trail kind of signal or sign. Yeah, symbol. And basically where we were was really close to the start of the Appalachian Trail, which starts at Springer Mountain, and a bunch of guys hiked up there. So AV and I were actually among those guys who hiked up there. It was a 8-mile round trip hike, and pictured right in front and center is Jonah. He was a kind of a guest leader there, awesome guy, great storyteller.
It was a good hike. Yeah, no more shorts. This is Andy Goldsworthy.
Another project that we did at the hike-in was the Andy Goldsworthy project. So first we watched a documentary about his process and the kind of techniques that he uses. This is actually my group's photo, or one of them. We were making these ducks out of rocks. That's a lot like what he did. He'd also make gradients with just materials that he found around, like rocks, leaves. He's very big on making holes and connecting them together. He also did lots of ice sculptures. It's just another picture. This is a different group. They actually just took a bunch of moss, and I don't really know their process, but I think they put it in the cracks of a tree, which is also kind of like Andy Goldsworthy, because he really made like lots of bright, colorful lines, and then he would contrast it with the outside using something darker. This is when we went to the Hive Museum. We were split up into two groups. One group went to see When Bullets exhibit, and my group, we first went to see Ansel Adams and a bunch of other photographers. So I think some of them were actually the original prints. So that was pretty cool. We got to see that.
And this is the hike that we did yesterday. This was at Arabia Mountain. It's about 40 minutes away from here in Duluth, I think. This is one of the trail markers. Helps you guide your way back after you get lost. This is also at Arabia Mountain. It's really actually cool. It's actually an old quarry site that now is a nature preserve. So some more trees and some cool rocks.
I actually took that picture. I liked it a lot, so got trying to put it in there. But you can see a lot of the leading lines going on, a lot of repetition and pattern, and all that just really captured my imagination. So I liked it a lot.
This is another picture taken at the quarry, and there's actually like a big lake over there and everything. So yeah. Okay, this is a picture taken by, I'm not sure who, but it really shows the contrast between the red and the white rocks underneath. And these were like scattered all throughout the quarry, and a lot of people did things like at the high, when we saw the exhibit, there was like a lot of making something small seem big, and this is actually just little twigs on the ground, so a lot of that happened in this stuff. And here's another good example of that, just taking some moss and getting real up close to it. And these were sculptures sculptures we actually found at the quarry that people had already made before we came there, and they're pretty cool to photograph. That's the lake. Okay, and so everyone should come to our art show January 22nd, tomorrow, at 4:30, 5:30 p.m. Presley 4. Be there. I'll be there.
Okay, painting with a purpose.
So, in Painting with a Purpose, each student was tasked to pick a social issue that mattered to them, and then we were tasked to create a body of 3 paintings around this topic. And on top of painting, we've also visited local artist galleries, art museums, we've been given art lectures, and we've explored art in Atlanta as a whole. And each one of these students today will share their first piece. And the first project was to create a painting about an object that symbolized our cause. So my painting was about the Falun Gong persecutions that are currently happening in China. And my topic was largely about genocide and persecution that's happening in the world. And I picked this issue because these persecutions are happening currently in China, but nobody really knows about them due to heavy censorship and just lack of media attention. And I thought it was really interesting that people were being tortured and arrested for simply following a religion in the present world. And so my object was bamboo chopsticks because one of the main torture methods they use is to utilize bamboo to hurt people. And yeah, I've also partnered with genocide nonprofits, and I'm talking with a Falun Gong professional in 20 minutes for an interview. And I also sent out a survey to gather more information. And here's Sam.
Well, my cause was air pollution in Atlanta, and I chose it because turns out Atlanta is one of the most polluted cities in the United States. And I chose a face mask to represent air pollution because that's what people wear when it gets really bad. And I partnered with Joey Guinta, something like that, from the Clean Air Campaign, and they basically raise awareness about air pollution in Atlanta. And then later today, I'm gonna interview him about air pollution. And then I'm going to the Georgia Natural Gas building to get a tour of it and see how they help the air pollution in Atlanta.
So I'm Sam, and my topic that I chose was domestic violence, and I chose this because it's not really talked about in the media unless it's a big celebrity that does it, like with Ray Rice. And I chose Hulk hands as my first object, and it's a very literal representation of what domestic violence is, and yeah. So I interviewed Kim Perdak from the Women's Resource Center to End Domestic Violence, and that's home based in Atlanta, and it provides safe houses and a hotline for victims to call. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Hannah. For my cause, I chose obesity in Atlanta and fighting obesity through getting active, especially on the Beltline, so that's why I did a bike helmet to get active, but also to represent protection against obesity because it has a lot of health risks associated with it. And I interviewed Dan Popovic, who's really cool. He is the race director at the Beltline, and he started a run club where you go and for once a month, and they just meet and they go on 5Ks, and it's just get people active around the area. And I surveyed people on and around the Beltline about how they get active and if the Beltline helps them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also you can see these pieces and more this Saturday for the JanTerm Art Showcase, and I hope you guys will come out. It's this Saturday the 24th from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Arts Exchange in Grand Park. And it'll be featuring paintings from art class, work from the street art and printmaking class, the wearable textile technology class, and then the Zumba and hip hop class. And there's going to be an email with more information about that sent out shortly. Thank you.
Next up, we have street art and printmaking.
Okay, we are part of Street Art Statements. These are our teachers. And the big idea of our class was to pick a scientific topic or issue and convey it through art and also make an infographic. So we kind of did a self-study and researched it.
Okay, so the first print we did was called block printing, and it's really simple. Basically, you cut foam and roll ink over it and then press it onto your paper or a sketchbook. It's kind of like a stamp, and these are two examples of prints. Then we watched the movie called The Cove, and it's about dolphin slaughter in Taiji. And so dolphins are captured and they're either slaughtered for their meat or sold to aquariums for training and that sort of thing. Next we went to the aquarium, and it was interesting because we got to see the dolphin show. And so, for example, dolphins are really sensitive to sound, and so it was interesting because the show was very loud and lots of singing and that sort of thing.
Okay, so once we chose our topics, we got started and started talking about what we would do to convey it in art. And for example, this is coyote overpopulation, and it was a linoleum printmaking. And basically, we carved out of linoleum, which was a really tedious process, and then put ink on it and print it onto paper. And then this is whaling, and then this is about global warming. And so on the left, that's the linoleum of Magnum Orders Adderall overuse. And then on the right, that's Landis Collins animal testing print.
Okay, so last week for the first 3 days, we went to a professional printmaking store called JanTerm, and we worked with these guys to do silkscreen prints. And so we come up with our ideas, and we had drawn them on just like a piece of printer paper, and then we transferred them onto the silk screens. And right here on the far bottom left, that's somebody preparing the silk screen, kind of cleaning it off. And then in the middle right here, that's someone getting ready to do a print. There's a guy showing us how to do it. And so it was kind of cool because we got to use all their equipment and like see how they did it and talk to them because they're actually in the business, and so they do stuff with Cartoon Network and things like that, so it's pretty interesting. And so, yeah. And bottom left is Maggie Porter's piece. It's about Adderall. And on the right, this is also Landis Collins' piece, and it's about animal testing. And this one on the bottom left was done by Brian Nam about world hunger. And the teddy bear is about child slavery. And on the right is whaling, because the products are used for shampoos and soaps and things like that.
So in week 3 we did, we're going to do copper etching, and we just finished our monoprinting. And so during the monoprinting, it's just like you get one chance, so that's why it's called monoprinting. And the copper etching, we're like getting started, sketching, and we're gonna like draw into the copper to get like, so the ink will get into like the sketches.
And here they're hand tinting the monoprints. Finally, we've been working on infographics on our own, on our topic, so that's going to be with our art. And so that's an example of her schizophrenia infographic. And then this is the bipolar infographic. It's just an excerpt from it.
And finally, like someone Jen said, everybody come out to the art show at the Art Exchange Saturday from 3 to 5. You can see all of our pieces and everything that we've done during JanTerm.
architecture and design.
All right. My name is Katie McGann, and I'm in the Going 3D in Architecture and Design JanTerm. So the first half of our JanTerm is building a 3D printer. 3D printers are a fairly new technology, but they're widely used. This is a picture from Home Depot where you can go and print any tools that you need to print if they don't have them. This is us in one of our first steps, building the extruder for a 3D printer. It's what the plastic comes out of to print whatever you need to print. Mr. Gibson is very helpful in building our 3D printer. On the left, you can see one of the first days. The printer came in this huge box with thousands of little tiny pieces that were unlabeled. So the first day we just spent all day organizing and categorizing so we knew where everything was. And then on the right you can see we're almost done with our printer. Our base is done and the legs are done and we're working on the top. And then today we printed our first little thing. I printed a keychain with my name on it.
Hello, I'm Christian, and so the first half of this JanTerm is learning about 3D printing, and the second half is learning everything about architecture and design. So an example of architecture types is the neoclassical style in the early 1900s to the more modern deconstructivism, and this is by Frank Gehry. He's the most famous architect of our age, and he's responsible for many buildings that look like it's a crazy style. And another famous architect that we learned about, and who actually did work in Atlanta, is Richard Meyer, who was the architect behind the High Museum. And we took a field trip here and some other places in West this year to talk about that.
Hello, Robin Seeds. So we went to the High Museum. We went on two field trips, and we went to the High Museum. And we also went to an architecture firm called Perkins & Will, where Alan Post and Joe Sligren showed us around and taught us about the process of being an architect. And they are helping to make buildings in Atlanta more eco-friendly. And this is the Swan House. It was built in 1928 by Philip Schutze, and it's very neoclassical with French and Italian influences. And you might recognize it from the movie The Hunger Games. Got a model on that seat. And then we also went to two hotels that were designed by John Portman, and they used the open atrium technique. And it was a revolutionary idea at the time, and no one else was really doing it until he made it popular. And we also went to the Clef Common at Georgia Tech, and we learned about it's a LEED Platinum certified building, which means that it's very energy efficient. And we learned about the different challenges that they faced, like keeping the sun out in the summer because it'll heat up the building, and letting it in the winter. Jack Cayley.
Yeah, so another thing we got to do was play with Legos, and the tool we used was the Architecture Studio or Design Studio, and it's a kit with over 1,200 pieces of 73 different types. And unlike most Legos, it doesn't have like a set instruction manual on what to build. The builder is given a lot of creative freedom to build and design whatever they want to build. And we used it a lot to learn about design principles that architects use. We would be given an architectural exercise in which we would be given a set of restraints which we had to follow in our design and build. And these restraints would be like we could only build with 2 vertical planes, or we had to make a bigger structure out of 8 different columns. And after we learned basics like that, we would go on to learning about using patterns to make bigger structures. This exercise we could use between 3 or 4 little pieces to make a single block. Then we would use that block to then build more and make a pattern out of it. And we really use this tool a lot to learn these design principles and put our knowledge that we learned about the architectural styles and techniques into practice with a easy and efficient way of doing so. And here's Gwen to talk about our final project.
So for our final project, we are going to be designing a building on campus. And we're going to be following this 5-step process that architects actually use. And the first step is to empathize, which means that it's basically the drawing board of what do you want your space to do, and it's all the big ideas of we want it to have a swimming pool, a gym, we want learning spaces. And this is the people who own the space, they're brainstorming on what they actually want. The next step is to find where the people who own the space go to the architects and tell them all their ideas and what they want. And then the architects sit in the ideate stage and say what is really realistic, what do we have to cut, which needs can't be met, which needs can be met. And the prototype is where they sit and they draw the floor plan and the blueprint and they design the building and play around with the Legos or computer programs, and then they make the test. So we followed all these processes, this process, and we are currently at the ideate stage where we're building and designing and trying to think about what we want to go where and if all the needs need to be met. And we are building a space for the green gym in the woods. So we are redesigning this building, and the final project, which is going to be the test, and we're going to take everything we've learned about design and the 3D printers we've just built, and we're going to build it out and make a prototype. And yeah, that was our project.
And last but definitely not least, Guatemala learning to surf.
I'm the one teacher who steps up here quickly because the Guatemala trip is something a little different than the rest of the JanTerm because it's continuity of something that's been going on at Westminster for 7 years. Just to put it in scope of people in this room, all students and faculty who have been on the Guatemala program or are going this summer, stand up for a second, you're ready to move, stand up, come on, come on. So all of these people have gone, are going. There's Bill McGann at the back. Round of applause for Bill and all the Guatemala people here. All right, thank you. You're going to hear about the program from the students who went this year.
So before even the month of January, we started to prepare for actually going. We sold soccer jerseys that were made actually in Guatemala and coffee that was grown there. And in the 3 days in the classroom before we left, we learned about the Guatemalan history and culture, and we learned about how a lot of it is influenced by European and Mayan descent, and how a lot of the environment of the entire area is pretty heavily influenced by Catholicism.
And we also learned about the relations between the United States and Guatemala for the last 100 years, and Guatemala's history of military dictatorship, which led them to a 26-year civil war that affected a lot of people, and they lost a lot of lives during that, and how it's affected the economy and situation now. And the average income for a family in Guatemala is $3,000 a year, and in Mexico it's $10,000, in the United States it's $53,000. But nonetheless, the people there were all really happy and excited and helped us a lot down there.
Okay, so on Friday, the day after we got there, we went to,
This is a nice picture at Cerro de la Cruz, and it overlooks the city that we stayed in, which is Antigua. So, this is a fun story. We went to Pastores to visit a school, Cambiando Vidas, and we were a couple of people decided that they needed a refreshing Coca-Cola. So they headed over to the shop across the street and they asked for a Coca-Cola. And when the guy working at the shop, they paid and he poured the Coca-Cola into a plastic bag and put a straw in it and it was like, okay, here's your Coca-Cola. And so it was really efficient of them because if they save the bottles that it comes in, it saves money as well. So even though like in America you would get a bottle or a can, it's the same drink. So they're just saving money.
Okay, so the real work started on Monday, the 12th, which is when we boarded into the back of the pickup trucks, and we went to the work sites in Ciudad Vieja, and we split up into groups of 3, and this is one of the sites, and this is the first day where we were working from dirt and foundation. So that was the before picture, and this is the after. So it's the same plot of land, but we built straight up. There's a roof. The door is in there, I think, and there's a window, so it was a big deal for everyone there. This is everyone playing with the kids there. The kids were a lot of fun because they were just really excited for us to be there and work with them to build houses. And we got John Farley there talking about how lacrosse can help you get rid of some problems that you might be dealing with, but sports gets you, through anger and stuff. And the kids love to be tossed around. Yeah. And this is a picture of us painting. You can see Kibler over there lifting the kid up to paint his own house. So there's a lot of that stuff going on, like working with the kids, because it was their house. And painting was a lot of fun the last day because, it's their house and it was a color that they wanted. And this is the Friday after everything was done. The floor was in, the door and windows were in, the ceiling with, a ceiling light? Like a skylight, yeah. So it was a really emotional time for everyone. Everyone dealt with it differently. Some people cried, especially at my house, which we'll see next. Yeah, so this is the house that we worked for to build, I guess, with the family. It was 5 kids and a single mother working to support her 5 kids. The husband had been murdered the year before, and one of the girls, there's 5 kids there, but one of the girls, she had to have a hernia operated on, and so that was a big deal throughout the week there. And luckily, the mom and her were able to join us on the key ceremony, and it was a big deal because she wasn't able to be there the whole week because she had to go to work when there was an emergency or just for every day because that's the only source of income they have. Now we're going to hand it over to Rankin and Miller to talk more about their families.
So this is the family that Rankin, Kyla, and I, and John built for. And picture to the left, starting at the left, is Eric, he's 2. And then the dad, Orlando, who couldn't be there during the week because, like in Josh's group, he was working and they can't afford to take the day off work. And then next to him is the mom, Araceli, and she was there with the kids during the week the whole time. And then at the far right is Ingrid, the girl who's 5.
So the men in Guatemala, they worked really hard for just a little. And Orlando worked at the base of a volcano. Or Antigua, where we stayed, is in between 3 volcanoes, and Ciudad Vieja, where we worked, is at the base of Volcano. So Orlando, the father, worked every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's a long day. And they get paid he picks coffee, so that's a very common job for men in Guatemala. And
they get paid by the pound. So they pick each individual bean and they get paid for it. So he picked 170 pounds of coffee a day. And that's pretty amazing. And if there's like a community car that went around to take people up to the volcano, and if it was full or if it didn't come, he would walk. So the regular picking season for coffee in Guatemala is from November to February, and that's not a lot of time. So these guys are doing everything they possibly can to provide their family. So after the picking season was over, he would make bread to do everything he possibly could to support his family. So he was a very nice guy on the job site. As soon as he got there, he wanted to work, he wanted to do coffee and everything like that. So, if that doesn't just kind of put it in perspective and show how the different life these people live in, I don't know really what will. But, so the last day they were leaving, the bus wouldn't start. So the guys sitting there were trying to catch our flight, and he's like, yo, we have to jump this bus. Can somebody move this bus? So we're out there pushing the bus to get it to start, and it takes a while. We're pushing in the middle of the street, people are honking, the people that drive there are absolutely crazy. So he's honking, everyone's honking, and we finally get the bus to start. So we jumped the bus on the last day. And then so on one of the days, so we played a little international friendly match with the workers. We ended up winning 8-6. We had some highlights. Austin Hudson had 4 goals. Johnny had some assists. It's awesome, Johnny. It's the first time we've ever won. So, Coach Hudson would attribute that to the lacrosse players being there. I don't know. There were a lot of soccer players. But it was a very fun experience, and to play with these guys after working with them for 4 days. And that was our Guatemala trip.